Hell Let Loose is on the verge of becoming one of the great World War II first person shooters. It's not quite there yet, it's got some work to do, but I believe if they can really nail Hell Let Loose, it will turn into one of these epic first person shooter franchises. And Hell Let Loose, if you didn't know, it started off as a Kickstarter and it is a real Kickstarter success story. It went live on Kickstarter on the 30th of September 2017, and after only 5 days, its goal was reached. And then it went on to hit 13 further stretch goals. And then, because of that, it went into further development. Team 17 came on board as the publisher. The game went live on Steam Early Access in June 2019. And then, because of its success, I think that led to Team 17 purchasing Hell Let Loose, the IP, the code, the assets, everything for it, for a figure up to 46 million in January 2022. Now, whether Team 17 buy in the game or not turns out to be good for it, we don't know yet. As Team 17, they've literally just taken over development in February 2023, and they've set up a new dev studio internally to carry on the development, but we don't know what their plans for the game is going to be and the franchise going forward. The last roadmap released by Black Matter, the creators of the game, is way out of date, and there is a bunch of stuff like missing from the game that was in that roadmap. And we know that Team 17 have big plans for the game going forward, and the new roadmap should be released any week now. But why is the game on the verge of greatness? And the game, it isn't perfect, there are problems, and I will let you know what I think the problems are with the game. But I'll start with the good stuff first, and let me know down in the comments below what you like or dislike about the game. But first, a word from today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. And if you don't know what a VPN does, it creates a secure tunnel between your device and the internet, and with ExpressVPN, it encrypts your network data with its best-in-class encryption. Even your internet service provider can see everything you do, even when browsing incognito. And they can legally sell data they have on you to ad companies. A VPN prevents your ISP from seeing your browser activity. ExpressVPN also allows you to change your online location so you can watch YouTube videos that may be restricted to certain countries. You can access streaming services such as Netflix and watch content they have which may not be available to your home country. ExpressVPN has the fastest speeds thanks to their premium servers, and they have 24/7 customer support, so they are always on hand to help you out. They are the top rated VPN provider as rated by CNET, The Verge, Mashable, TechRadar, and many more. If you're interested in using ExpressVPN, head to the link on screen, which is also in the description and a pinned comment, to get access to a deal which will get you your first 3 months for free. Thank you, ExpressVPN, for sponsoring today's video. Now, I have a fondness for realistic, tactical, or hardcore shooters, and a lot of people out there call Hell Let Loose like a milsim, a military simulator, and I would completely disagree with everyone who says that. I've been playing Hell Let Loose since it released in early access, and I call Hell Let Loose an accessible, realistic shooter because it takes elements from the more casual games like Battlefield and Call of Duty, but then also mixes in elements from the more like hardcore sort of tactical games like Postscriptum, Squad, Project Reality. And it's blended these elements together so well that it's really easy to pick up. You don't have to worry about managing little micro systems in the game. You can just jump into it and relatively easily get into a game, get into combat, and have a good game. All the weapons in the game are really high damage. There is an extremely low time to kill. Your basic rifles like the M1 Garand and any bolt action rifle, one hit kill up to 200 meters. Your automatic rifles, which I'm putting under the BAR, STG, FG42, they are one shot up to 100 and then two shots after. SMGs, two shots under 75 meters, I think, or under 50 meters. They changed it a few months ago, I can't quite remember. So it's really easy to get a whole bunch of kills if you've got a good position, but again, on the flip side of that, it's really easy to be killed, and unlike a lot of other casual shooters, a headshot with any weapon at any range is an insta-kill. If you did get a pistol and shoot someone in the head 300 meters away, if you could even see them, then yeah, that would be an insta-kill. I have managed to get a 200-meter kill with the Russian Nagant revolver somehow, and with this high damage aspect they have with all the weapons, they have put quite heavy recoil in there as well, especially when you compare it to the more casual shooters. And what I really love about the games that put like a high amount of recoil into their weapons is that it lends itself to like a really skill-based system. Instead of something like Battlefield, where for every game it uses random bullet deviation, where pretty much when you're ADSing and you start shooting at anything, your bullets will just be hitting around where you're aiming at because it's just randomly spraying out, instead of focusing on vertical recoil with a bit of horizontal deviation. Hell Let Loose doesn't use random deviation at all. The bullet will land where you're aiming, but you got to take into account bullet drop, of course. So if you play with certain weapons and keep practicing with them and get used to that recoil, you will be so good with those weapons. A lot of people don't like the Thompson because of the damage and the recoil, but for me, the Thompson is my favorite weapon, and I can almost feel like a surgeon with it sometimes because I've got so good at controlling the recoil with it. Hell Let Loose also has a big emphasis on squad play. I mean, you can't even spawn in the game unless you join a squad, and with those squads, you are limited to picking certain roles. Yes, everyone can jump in as a rifleman, but you do want to get a different role in your squad to give your squad that better chance of success. And because you're sort of forced into these squads, it does force communication. Now, a lot of people are going to put in the comments now that there's a lack of communication in the game and people don't use their microphones. And if you do join a squad where people don't talk, just leave it and join another. You will have a much better game if you're in a squad where people are actually talking. And because of this forced communication within the squads, it has created a really strong community, I think, for Hell Let Loose. Yes, there's always bad eggs. That's the same with any community. But with Hell Let Loose, I think it does have a really strong community. There are a lot of people out there that will help new players if they join their squad. And through just playing Hell Let Loose and playing with random people, I have made quite a few friends with this game. I've also joined a couple of different communities within the game, and then that's just expanded my friend base within Hell Let Loose, if that makes sense. And because of that community within Hell Let Loose, the game has naturally developed a competitive scene. And I never thought that Hell Let Loose would develop a competitive scene, because you are really looking at 50v50. There are quite a few clans that may not be that size, but, well, there's a lot of different clans in Hell Let Loose that have more than 50 people in it, so they can always field like a full team. If not, there are smaller groups that will band together in little alliances and then play competitive games like that. And the competitive scene is really healthy for Hell Let Loose. There's tournaments going on, there's scrims going on, there's people commentating on the matches on Twitch because they can fly around in an admin cam and get bird's eye views. It's a really good watch, and I would recommend watching people that are doing these live commentaries on these competitive matches. I myself have actually commented on a small tournament. I can't quite remember where it was arranged through. I think it was a DreamHack tournament that was arranged through NPA, where the main commentator was Chuck Dix, and then they had me and some angry Argentinian YouTuber commentating on the side, and that was really good, and we were flying around in admin cam trying to get some good shots as well. So yeah, definitely check out the competitive scene. It's really good. Now, for the history buffs out there, the maps in Hell Let Loose were originally created using satellite photos and recon photos from World War II, but there will be some differences from those photos because the maps have been continually worked on. A couple of the maps have been completely rebuilt. I think that's Hurtgun Forest and Samory de Mont. And that's a really good thing that the developers have done, because a lot of games will just make a map, put it out, and leave it. But the developers for Hell Let Loose have been continually working on these maps, fixing them, putting in some extra improvements where it will benefit the gameplay instead of the historical accuracy of the maps. And really, gameplay over realism, in my opinion, every time. And these changes, I think, for every map have always been positive. And one of the most underrated features that I think Hell Let Loose has, and very few games have it, is that the capture points are randomized every time. You could play a map 5 times in a row on the same server and you'll have different objectives to capture because it's just a feature within the game. And I wish a lot more games did that. I know Squad does it, and I think that might be it. But if you're playing a game like Battlefield and you have the preset capture locations, the game will play the same every single time because it's the same map every single time. But with Hell Let Loose, you could have completely different capture points each time you play the map, which will then open up different angles of attack. The capture points will look and play completely differently, so it keeps the game fresher for longer. Graphically, the game looks pretty good. It's not gonna, wow anyone, to be honest, with its graphics, but considering the scale of the maps, that there can be 100 players going on with different skins and different weapon effects and the tanks and the bombing runs and everything, it does look good. And when you're in like a massive combat engagement where you're seeing bits of muzzle flash everywhere, the bullet impacts, the tanks shooting in, the particle effects and bombing runs and everything, it just looks and sounds awesome. Putting those all together, it does create this epic atmosphere in combat, and I don't think a lot of games come close to that, especially with the feeling of how vulnerable you are, because just that one shot can kill you. Also, the game has been consistently worked on throughout its development. Like I've said, they reworked the maps, they've reworked the sound effects multiple times, the visual effects, pretty much anything in the game. They haven't just left once they put it in. They've looked at it and reworked it and improved it. And I hope Team 17 carry that on. But like I said earlier, the game is not perfect and it does have some issues. For one, it has a bad new player experience. Or really, there isn't a new player experience within the game. And if you are a new player, don't let that put you off, because if you go into a game, join a squad, and say that you are new, the community is good at helping out those new players and getting them actually integrated with the game and learning pretty much how to play it. But I do really think there needs to be something in the game itself, like a tutorial or something, so players can actually play in really a safe environment, like an offline boot camp level, so they can get used to the guns, get used to the vehicles, be told how the spawn system works when it comes to outposts and garrisons, and generally the best way to sort of play the game, where when you're defending, you don't just defend your small little control point, you need to defend the entire area around it to like hunt down the enemy and stop them getting even close. It needs to do a new player experience just a lot better than what it does now. The optimization needs work. This has been really a problem with the game since day one. While it has been getting better throughout development, there are still some areas that need just to be worked on a lot better, like Stalingrad. When Stalingrad first released, it was called Stuttergrad because of how bad the stuttering was. While that's got better, it still stutters quite a bit. And with people on weaker PC systems and the console experience, it's just not as smooth as it should be. So I hope Team 17 work on that and improve it. And this opinion I have now may be a bit controversial because it's about the tanks. And I think the tank play needs to be improved big time. And I can't really say too much about it because I don't really have any tank experience. I've played the game for well over 1,000 hours, and I've probably only played like 3 or 4 games, like full games in a tank. But speaking to people that play tanks a hell of a lot, they do say that the tank play is kind of simple. They say that Postscriptum does tank play a lot better, and the damage model for tanks is just too simple. It needs to be reworked. It is quite like a casual system. Yes, there are some tanks that cannot penetrate certain armor on certain tanks, but I think it needs to be worked on and made better, more like the Postscriptum model. Now, while I said earlier that the objectives get randomized when you go onto a map and that it helps to keep that fresh, I do think the game needs new modes, and really a unique mode that no other game has, because the two game modes we have in Hell Let Loose right now, Warfare and Offensive, really are just variations of Conquest, which pretty much every shooter uses. And that's just been overdone now. Conquest is just in every single game that comes out. We need something new. So Hell Let Loose, it really needs to add something, just something else that no other game has. Make it stand out from the crowd just a bit more. A lot of people will say that the meta for the game needs to be updated when it comes to spawning outposts, garrisons, defending, attacking, pretty much any way of how the game is played, that it needs to be changed because people think it's got stale or people have figured out the best way to play it. And the meta has been updated a few times throughout development, but I think that it's quite difficult to balance or get it right, because with Hell Let Loose, all the spawns apart from your headquarters are built by players, and players will figure out the best way or the most optimized way to play that system. So no matter what changes they make, the player base will figure it out, and then we'll get this issue again where people will say the meta needs to be updated. So it is a difficult thing to really do, or really maybe they shouldn't even change it because of how it is now. It works quite well now. There'll be a lot of people that will say no, it doesn't, it needs to change. But there are some things within the game I think they definitely do need to change, such as the recon artillery loop. Now, the recon squad is your spotter sniper, and generally one of their main roles is to go to the enemy headquarters where their artillery is and pretty much camp the artillery to stop enemy players spawning in and using that artillery. Now, that gameplay loop is incredibly boring. Imagine you're playing as a sniper, you've been told to sit in a bush at one of their main headquarters spawn points and pretty much just watch the artillery for the entire game, maybe killing one or two guys as they spawn in to sit on the artillery. That really needs to change. Also, I think the resource nodes for Hell Let Loose are kind of pointless now. The resource nodes, if you don't know, they generate, well, resources so the commander can use those to spawn in tanks, call in a bomb and run, or use certain abilities. And I remember early on development, the resource node system was something they just sort of put into the game until they would bring out their full idea of what they wanted. I'm pretty sure that's how it was. But the nodes just sort of stayed in the game. I think the nodes should just be removed, because what you can do with the nodes is you can just build the nodes right back at your headquarters at the beginning of the game, and then that's it. The nodes are going to generate the resources they need to, and that's it. They either need to remove nodes and just let both teams generate a consistent amount of resources throughout the game, or they need to make resources dependent on sort of capture locations or garrisons or something else to make them more valuable, and something that should be sort of defended a bit more, and something that you can't really just build in your headquarters and leave them for the whole game. And I'll say that large updates for the game have been kind of slow. In the early days, they would keep them placed apart with a few patches in between, and I know they did this because when they would launch a new update, which would come with a new map or two, or some vehicles, weapons, it would be a big thing they could make like a little trailer on and shout out about it a bit more, instead of just putting out these multiple little patches with a little bit of content drop here and there. Instead of just doing like a patch where they could put in a vehicle and then maybe a few weeks or a month later a patch of a weapon, they would save it up until the big update and then be like, look at all this new stuff. And those updates would come with a massive list of fixes, which, to be honest, I think if you get a fix and it's ready, just whack it into the game instead of waiting weeks or months for the big update. So what about the future for Hell Let Loose? So we now know that Team 17 are fully in control of the game. That happened in February, like I said earlier, and this actually happened a few months earlier than planned, because originally when Team 17 bought it, Black Matter were given an 18-month development contract, which would have ended in, I think, June this year. So it's happened a little bit earlier, and it's going to be interesting if we ever find out why that's happened earlier. And right now we have no idea how the game will continue. We know that the roadmap will be coming out soon, in maybe a week, a couple of weeks. So we really need to know how Team 17 are going to treat the game, how they're going to update it, how they're going to fix it. Are they going to change any of the base game to fit what they want to do with it? Are they going to bring in more microtransactions? I mean, there's very few microtransactions as it is. It's just some cosmetic stuff, which you don't need to buy. But are they going to do some stupid weapon skins with leaves and camo and all this sort of stupid stuff on? I really hope not. And we want news on the sequel. And there will be a sequel because Team 17 haven't put up nearly 40 million just for Hell Let Loose 1. They are going to make a sequel because they will want to make a franchise out of it because, you know, they are a company. The company wants money and they need to earn back that 40 odd million, which really they won't do, or I don't think they'll do, with sales of Hell Let Loose 1 from when they bought it. So Hell Let Loose 2, in my opinion, it is coming. So that's why I think Hell Let Loose is on the verge of greatness. It needs a little bit of work and we need to know some plans for the future. Next, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the most legendary World War II shooters that had ultimately one of the biggest impacts in the first-person shooter space in history. So I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive on that game. So subscribe if you want to check that out. Give this video a like if you liked it, dislike if you didn't. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.